So first of all, the thing is
Right, that's why you already got it.
good evening, everyone. Good evening, good evening, good evening. So we are back with another episode of Pain Reality. And tonight, in light of some of the stuff that we've seen on social media today, with the apparent suicide of Twitch, um, we decided that we wanted to talk about mental health tonight. To kind of bring that to the forefront, not just mental health, but to talk about men's mental health in particular, because I think that that's kind of the issue. Pretty much, that's kind of where we're at, and it has always been one of those things that we kind of don't talk about it. Mental health isn't First of all, mental health isn't one of those things that's widely talked about anyway. Hi Kim. It's not widely talked about anyway, but um it's even worse when it comes to men's mental health. It's like that's one of those things that we just kind of gloss over. Like, don't nobody want to talk about it, don't nobody want to discuss it. Um so it's going to take us tonight to discuss it. So since this is a man's topic, I can offer my feedback or my opinions, but it is more of a man's conversation. So for me, when it comes to men's mental health, like how many people make it a priority? And I guess since we kind of bring it all back to marriage conversations, how important is that, do you think, Julius Payne, for your significant other to invest in your mental health? And I'm talking, this is strictly, we are not talking about women, strictly talking about guys. Like, how important is that?
Um,
Oh, my wedding ring.
yeah, me too. No, just playing.
I don't know what I did with it.
It's goofy. Mo, I think it's ask the question again.
How important do you think it is for your significant other, as a guy, for your significant other to invest or be conscious of your mental health?
Well, in my opinion, um, it's one of the most important things for a healthy relationship or for your marriage to thrive. Um, what?
Yeah, open.
And I say that only because, like, I know a lot of times we talk about like women check out emotionally or mentally well before they may check out physically or whatever the case. But I mean, I know a few people that males that basically like, what I mean, feel the same way. Feel like, you know what, I checked out a long time before, what I mean, like we ended it or before it was over, so to speak. So I mean, I think it's really important that, I mean, the spouse or the mate, partner, whatever you want to call it, um, I think it's important that they like make a concerted effort, an intentional effort, so to speak, um, to like pay attention to that because it's not just women that check out.
So what do you think is like some signs, or like something, like if you, as a guy, what do you think some signs is that the woman's significant other should be looking out for?
Um, I mean, it when I say this, it can look different for whoever you are and whatever your relationship is. But I mean, like a disconnect. You know what I mean? Like um, just a disconnect in interaction, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? Like if you are used to, I don't even want to say extreme, but consistent interaction. I can't even see that.
I know I'm gonna put it up there.
If you're consistent with your interactions and stuff like that, and that starts to change or go downhill, you know what I mean? And I'm not talking about the typical, hey, you want something to eat, you know what I mean, when I'm out, but I mean like around the house, like interactions change. You can tell there's tension there, or like um hair trigger arguments, so to speak.
Okay, so let's stop there. With the checking out and hair trigger. Now, is that a result because something is going on in the relationship, or because you would be having some issues that your mental health need to be attended to?
I mean, it could be either one. But I mean, if something's going on in a relationship, that can work on your mental health as well, though.
Well, I mean, I get that, but I'm wondering if, um, I guess I don't know how to put this. I'm wondering if the reason the guy, I guess, would be acting that way is strictly due to mental health, or has his mental health been triggered, I guess, because of something?
Yeah, I mean, it's possibly both. You know, what I mean, it could be either or. But I mean, those are conversations that have to be had. You know what I mean? Have to be had. Like you find out which one it is, so to speak, through those conversations, like through asking. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? But I mean, let's be completely honest. Like that's on a lot of people's back burner. You know what I mean? Like when you think about men and the role they're supposed to play in a marriage and a household, most people aren't checking on whether or not the guy is okay from a mental standpoint.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So, I mean, also from a physical standpoint, which will play a part on the mental aspect. But I mean, I think it's just so, as a guy, you kind of go through life a lot of times and you're like, I'm going to deal with it. You know what I mean? And I mean, just like for women, if a guy checks out, I mean, he still doesn't necessarily just walk away. You know what I mean? So it's
Physically, you mean?
yeah,
Okay.
still doesn't physically just walk away. Sometimes it's, hey, I'm in this thing. I wish it was different, but it's not. You know what I mean? So I just
Okay.
go through the motions of life.
So Marcus say y'all shut down, become very silent, very distant. Some of the same stuff that you were saying. So I guess my thought process is then, when is that a concern mentally? Like, when should I pay attention mentally? And I mean, I'm talking about some, you dealing with some rough stuff, not just relational, but you got a whole bunch of stuff going on. When is that time frame, or when is that moment that, if you're dealing and you're struggling in your mental health, I'm talking about to the point where you contemplating suicide type stuff. And I'm not saying that you are, but when do you think that moment would be that that significant other should have been like, okay, something more is going on? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, the minute they feel like or they see changes in that person. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, it's, and I don't want to say it's the exact same thing, but it's similar to like when you're looking at somebody and they become involved in an abusive relationship,
Mhm.
and you see different signs of personality changes.
Right.
The way they dress changes. They don't necessarily do the same stuff that they used to do or like to do. You know what I mean? Like just those changes. I think that is huge for a woman or a partner to say like, hey, like, and not just the typical, hey, you good? And then that person like, yeah, I'm cool. And they like, okay. And
Mhm.
I mean, and I'm not saying you badger them or anything like that, but um at times if you see those changes, which I don't want to say are easy to see, you know what I'm saying? But if you're in a relationship and you're married and you know this person and you know how this person has been personality wise, you know what I mean? Then sometimes they can be easy to see, easy to spot. if you're paying attention.
But think about it. What about and I mean I guess we can shine it on people in the spotlight. They're so used to masking their true emotions. I'm so used to smiling and giving off the appearance that everything is okay, everything is well. I can be taken in by that too, thinking like, oh, okay, you know, they smiling. Like, I don't know, like do you feel like as a guy I've gotten so used to hiding that side of my emotions or hiding that side of my mental health that I don't know, you know?
Yeah, I mean, but that speaks directly to the people don't necessarily pay attention to it.
Right.
You know what I
Well,
mean? So
yeah.
like when you think about it, the celebrities or whatever that are out there and they smiling through the pain and all that different stuff, that's what we see. And like because mental health isn't an easy conversation or really one that most people want to have, okay, well you smiling and you said you happy and did it. So I'm gonna take that.
Mhm.
And that's just gonna be the final answer.
Oops.
You know what I mean? Because it's easier to do that than it is to actually, and this ain't gonna go for everybody because obviously everybody's not in your circle. But it's easier to do that even sometimes for people in your circle than it is to and pride might not be the right word for it, but to like dig a little deeper,
Mhm.
you know what I'm saying? Or like try to make you a little more comfortable in knowing that, hey, you got somebody you can talk to in me. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't
Right.
matter what it is. And I'm not saying like we had talked about before, it's not always the other person's responsibility to take on that burden of whatever trauma or whatever that person may have been through. But if we're in a relationship, you know what I mean? Like that's part of it. Sometimes you go above and beyond just the normal, yeah, they said they was cool.
So Marcus said to be transparent, if a man is having suicidal thoughts, nobody would ever pick up on the signs.
It's probably true. Because I mean, as a man, you're not gonna tell anybody that for real. I mean, depending on the relationship, depending
Mhm.
on because again, like the word counseling for a lot of men is no, that's no, I don't need counseling.
So why do you think that is though? If there's if there's help available, why do you think it's so hard for men to get it or ask for it? Not every
That's that.
man,
That's
you
but
know.
that's it. That's what it is. Gotta ask for help.
But I mean, I get that, but why is it so hard? If you're struggling mentally,
Natural pride.
natural pride.
Natural pride.
What does that mean? Can you give me the definition of this?
Yeah, that just means like men are born prideful.
Oh, okay, got you.
Or like I don't even want to necessarily say born prideful, but they like through life they build up pride. You know what I mean? So I mean it's and it's just that's unfortunately the way that being a male has been for so long that it's like yeah we're now coming to a point where people are more guys are more comfortable saying hey I need help or I need to talk to somebody but like in the cases of somebody committing suicide and people are like well I never would have thought it or I never knew it
Yeah, like
yeah
that's
because
a lot of people's conversation when
it
something so
is
tragic like that happens. And I guess that's the point of this conversation is like, and this ain't got nothing to do with you, but I would never want to say that to myself.
right
You know, like that for me being left behind has to be the most excruciating guilty feeling in the world, especially if I'm talking about this my boo
right
thing. This my person.
because if we being honest it like to the partner that's left behind or the person left behind it's basically saying you didn't pay attention.
Right.
You know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and again, like because there went women's intuition, I got a gut feeling, stuff like that, like all that different stuff really exists. You know
Mhm.
what I mean? So you can see when things change in your relationship as far as like somebody's mentality, or should I say somebody's approach to the relationship.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Or somebody's approach to you. You can see when even something slightly, you know what I mean? Like because you just like, wait, that's different than last Wednesday.
Hmm.
You know what I'm saying? And for if somebody is that deep into their mental health to where they're contemplating suicide and then unfortunately doing it as the person left behind, yes, you're going to feel like, well, most people are going to feel like, whoa, like I got to pay more attention to the people I love. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, there's going to be people that are like, he should have said something to somebody. But where is that avenue? You know what I'm saying? Where is that opening? Where is that room for that?
So, okay, let's read the comment. Marcus says, because society taught us at a young age that men have to keep pushing forward no matter the circumstances. And I thoroughly and completely agree with that. But in thinking of that thought process, where then do you begin to change that culture to say, not even so much, I can give that open culture of saying, hey, Jew, like what if we got to get down and dirty talking about some mental health, talking about some therapy talk. There ain't no judgment on my part. I need you mentally sound. Let's do what we got to do. I can change the culture in my mind. Mm-hmm. How do you get that guy to accept that culture change to where they are now? Now I am comfortable enough to say, hey, I just need to talk to somebody. Mm-hmm. So where they feel comfortable to my circle ain't looking at me in judgment because maybe I'm not as strong as everybody thought. Mm-hmm. But for me, that's strength right there to come say, hey,
right,
I need to talk to somebody.
There's no specific right answer to that. Because everybody's so different. What I will say is I don't know if it's realistic to think that a guy's whole circle is going to be built for those conversations.
Yeah, but then if not, I don't.
But I mean, but that's just realistic though. You know what I mean? Like, and I mean, I get it. You're like, oh, well, maybe that shouldn't be a circle. But at the end of the day, everybody's, like we talked about with trauma and everything, and the way you raise kids and things, like everybody's raised different. Mm-hmm. So I don't have to necessarily agree with a person's thought process when it comes to like that type of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? To still be like, okay, that's a person in my circle. Even within your circle, you have compartments. You know what I'm saying? Okay, I got my circle. My circle consists of 5-6 people. Okay, that's my go-to when I have emotional stuff I need to talk about. Because that person is on a level where they won't joke and laugh about it.
Right. Yeah.
I don't bring it up around those couple people because they don't take it as serious. Even though, okay, in other conversations we might have, I might be like, it's a serious thing. Maybe not even talking about myself.
So do you think, let's just say you and your circle of friends, do you think one person can change that culture amongst the circle of friends? And I'm talking about male friends, not female friends. Like you got 5 good male friends, this is my circle. But do you think within that circle, that culture of at least that circle, if these are the guys that I'm closest to, do you think a conversation can be had to where that culture can change? Just because society is showing us that men struggle with mental health, men have thoughts of suicide, just as much as women do, and, completion of suicide, so if I have this circle of guy friends, if we all in the group chat together, can that be a safe space for one of the guys to let loose, so to speak?
I think so. I think that it has to become the norm, like part of normal conversation. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Where like, because sometimes guys or people in general, like wait until it's so overwhelming. You know what I mean? To where it's like it gets to the suicidal thoughts, as opposed to like, yeah, man, that happened to me and that really sucked. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, that did something to me. That messed me up mentally for a minute.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Not making it part of the normal conversation. So then by the time it gets to possible suicidal thoughts, it's so built up, but you've never brought it up to your friends or y'all don't talk about it. So then it's like, man, that ain't that drastic. But you don't understand it. It's such a build up that, it is.
Marcus said that's a tough barrier to break, honestly. Imagine venting to your friends and being told until you fight yourself out of that trash bag, you're stuck. You're stuck in. Don't contact them.
Yeah, that's not my friend anymore.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I that and that's just me personally. Like I mean, I get it,
Or
and I
bring to your spouse, and somehow the spotlights get flipped back to them. Yeah, that. Those ones is tough. I do agree. Like that couldn't be my friend circle. Not somebody. If I'm calling you friend,
right,
I'm holding you to a higher level of
yeah,
intimacy than just my acquaintance
right,
or
right,
associate.
right.
Um, friend is a that's different. You know, being my friend is
Yeah,
different than your normal relationship. So
and okay, and please, like when I say that, understand that like I'm even coming from a perspective of we've never had this conversation before.
mhm,
You know what I mean? So like you could be friends for 20 years with somebody, never have a conversation about yours or anybody else's mental health, and you know what I'm saying. So you've never seen how they would respond in that,
right,
right? So you might have that conversation then, or it's just like when we talk about rape culture and like victim blaming stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like, okay, we've never talked about any of these topics, and then one day after 20 years or whatever, okay, we talk about something that happened to somebody, and here you go victim blaming, or here you go talking about, oh, well, they was looking for this or that. You know what I mean? So it's
right.
like it's not going to be as easy after 20 years to be like, okay, that's not my friend.
So then I don't. It's like, what do you do? Are you bottling all that stuff
Are
up?
you typing
Like,
in a question?
uh-uh.
Oh,
So I mean, are you bottling all that stuff in? Like, where does it go? Like, if
yeah.
you're okay, well, let me go back to these comments real quick. If you're dashed down by your friend group,
Mm-hmm.
or even one person within that friend group, where do you go from there? Like, how do you bounce back? Do you seek
Some
another?
some people do, some people don't. But I mean that's why this is such a tough conversation because those that like that individual, I don't know their name, which I was talking about earlier, that committed suicide. They might have told a friend,
Mhm. Yeah,
and for them, that friend not taking it serious, you know what I'm saying, or not checking on them again, or not giving them a reason to be like, you know what, no, I'm not going to do this. They couldn't bounce back, right? But then sometimes there's guys that, okay, I have these emotions and these feelings or this stuff going on in my head. Oh man, they laughed at me. All right, I'm gonna just suck it up.
yeah. So Marcus said, in all fairness, he didn't blame the person for saying that because usually when a man says how he feels, they're getting looked at as crying for attention.
Sometimes, but depending on who you're talking to, yes. And like he said earlier, like when the spouse turned the spotlight back on them and stuff like that, like even those situations, like I mean, we've heard young ladies say, what he gonna do for me? You know what I mean? If a guy
Mm,
is sensitive or if a guy is, you know what I mean, emotional, like, okay, what he gonna do for me?
right.
I don't want no emotional man. And it's like, so as a guy, you're like, no, you don't, you know that every woman isn't like that. However, that still can affect how you act. You know
Hmm.
what I mean? Even though you know, it's just like when you know everybody's not racist. You know what I'm
Right.
saying?
Yeah.
You still might be in a situation where like you looking at this person and you just like, ugh, basing that off of stuff
Every
that
other
yeah,
interaction.
that
Yeah.
you've heard, as much as you know what the reality is. So I mean, it's yeah, it's a tough conversation to have with your spouse. It can be. I won't say it is because it's not for everybody, but it can be a tough conversation to have with your spouse, with your friends. Um, and then again, because counseling's been looked down on, especially in the black community for
Hmm.
so long. Oh, you gotta shrink. Oh, you go to a counselor? Like, no offense, white people, well, my therapist. Like, good job. Black people like my therapist, like, hey girl, what? And
um. Okay, so I want to bounce back to this the spouse comment.
mm-hmm.
What is your advice in that situation?
in the situation if the spouse then makes it about them.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother conversation that has to be had. You know what I'm saying?
Between the couple.
Yeah. Yeah, because essentially it's like I have to let you know that you're not making room for me to open up, you know what I mean, and talk about this stuff and then make it the focus of what we're talking about or what we're dealing with at the time. I mean, think about it. There's probably nothing worse than you pouring your heart out, talking about what you're feeling and what you're dealing with mentally, and then somebody turning it around and making the whole conversation about them.
Right.
Especially if this isn't something that you brought to me before and said. You know what I mean? Like, okay, so my conversation is triggering your conversation, but in this moment, we're talking about me.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like when you're an advocate in this moment, like somebody calls to help their friend. Okay, my focus is the person on the phone.
Right.
It can't be your friend. It has to be that conversation right there. Like,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I would say you have to have that conversation, that other conversation where you're just like, hey, we kind of never worked on what I was talking about. We kind of never talked about me. So I feel like you kind of minimized it. You kind of brushed it off. Like,
so do you have some thought process around like how a husband and wife could like kind of sit down from a man's standpoint?
mm-hmm.
Like how could that conversation be had? Like, I mean,
Which one? The one about you making it about you?
No, not
or
that
just the
one.
mental health conversation?
Yeah, just the mental health conversation. Like, how do you create that space to be able to sit as a husband and wife to have that conversation? Or has this already been established from the beginning that this is how we do in marriage, that we pay attention to these things? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, if and because think about it. Think about how much stuff that you don't realize you needed to pay attention to when you got married. You know what I mean? Until you're in the marriage, until you're like going through it. So I mean, if you start a relationship, just like with the marriage counseling before you get married,
mm-hmm.
a lot of times that's not even one of the things that's brought up, right? It's like the conversation about, you know, paying attention to your partner's mental health and da 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 da. Okay, so we'll just nix that and say, okay, that's usually not something that you go into the relationship thinking about. But if mental health becomes something that y'all struggle with, one or both struggle with, I would say being intentional. Like, okay, I'm gonna make sure I'm checking in every week,
mm-hmm.
or if it looked like you even, hey, how was work? You know what I mean? Or if anything changed, like checking in, like, okay, we can sit down and actually, hey, well, I'm kind of beat down mentally. You know what I'm saying? And unfortunately, and I don't even know if I want to say unfortunately, but I think that sometimes the men may have to actually take the lead on that and be more open
mm-hmm.
and start that conversation. You know what I'm saying? Because again, we aren't taught at a young age to pay attention to people's mental health.
That's true.
So if I ain't been paying attention to nobody's mental health for 25, 30 years, I'm thinking because we married, thinking 6 months, all that's gonna change. No.
Mm.
So I mean, I would say just be intentional. I mean, even if it's asking like how you doing, you know what I mean, like how you doing, and then they're like, you know, because I do it. I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah, I know you do it.
I mean, that don't mean I'm not good. I'm just saying that's 99.9997% of men will say I'm good or I'm fine. I'm cool.
So, do you prioritize your mental health?
Yeah, I just took 2 days off work for my mental health.
Good answer.
Probably not as much as I need to for real, but doing the work that I do, I try to make it a point to prioritize a little more than not my mental health. Just because, like I said, like everybody's doesn't work in the field that I work in. You know what I'm saying? Everybody doesn't have the resources and the information that I've had doing the work that I do. So,
True.
So I've been able to be like, you know what, it's important for me. It's okay to sometimes just not be feeling it. You know what I mean? Like, I think as men, you're taught like you can't have an off day. You can't have a bad day. And I'm like, heck with that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, so like just I'm just like remember when they said Luther's curl didn't quite curl? Like when you had those days, it just don't.
Okay, so the
I'm just
guy
saying.
Chester from Lincoln Park gave so many signs through his music, and nobody ever heard his cry for help. I look at celebrities who's taking their life and nobody saw it coming. It's scary when you think about it. Yeah, that's honestly really why the thought process was to actually talk about this. Is because when you're in the limelight, no one literally ever sees it coming, and they always say, "Man, I never would have saw that coming."
Yeah.
Like you're the life of the party. Like you were always smiling. You
Right.
were always doing this, or you were always doing that. I never would have thought you were struggling
And
like that.
let's be completely honest. A lot of that is because people feel like if you're rich, if you're famous, you don't have regular everybody people issues.
Regular, degular.
You know what I mean? Like, oh, you got all that money and you think about suicide. Like, I literally know people who that will be their comment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, because you have money, they think you don't have real life stuff that like. So a lot of times that's why you didn't see it coming, because you felt
Because
like,
your mindset already.
yeah, you already made up
Yeah.
your mind like that. That's why. That's
Yeah.
why it's. I think one of the most. I think one of the worst things that we say sometimes, it's a respectful thing, but I think it's also like um a scary thing is when you say, what do you give somebody who has everything? You know what I'm saying? And who do we say that about though?
Most of the time, people with money.
People with money. We don't say that about John that lived next door to us. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't say that about Terrence who live on Store Avenue. You know what I mean? Like, you say that about people who have money, and it's like, realistically, they don't have everything.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, they have a lot and maybe more than you, but they
that's
don't.
material stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
But that's how we gauge things. That's how we gauge whether or not somebody is going through something or should be going through something because of the money they have. And it's like, so like he said, like people make music crying out for help. People, you know what I mean? People do drugs crying out for help, all this different stuff. And then it's always like you said, oh, well, I never would have seen that coming. Yeah, because you ain't paying attention.
Yeah. But even that, with that thought process, I can't imagine the spouse. I can't imagine in this case, the wife who never seen that coming.
Right.
For me, I don't. So I had, I'm always into marriage conversations. And this conversation didn't have anything to do with this, but a thought from that conversation occurred to me. A lot of times people like intimacy in a marriage. And so if you're lacking that intimacy, and intimacy goes beyond a sexual thing. So if you're lacking that in general, I can see how as a spouse you would miss that about your partner.
Right.
I can see where that would be missed. So then the question becomes, how are we rebuilding intimacy in our marriages to where I'm in tune enough with you that I am picking up? Now I know when you off, but for somebody else, like how to recreate the intimacy in your marriage to where your thought process is, oh, okay, he ought something
a little, even if it's a little bit.
Yeah.
Something, hold on, you need 6 chicken tenders. Oh, yeah, 4 today. Something's off. Yeah, I get it.
Really?
Yeah.
Something wrong with you.
But no, I mean that's part of growth. You know what I mean? That's part of learning your spouse every day. That's part of growing together. You know what I'm saying? Like, because it's not going to be an easy thing to do. So you do have to be intentional. And then as far as like men, okay, sometimes you got to be intentional on pushing that conversation.
Yeah.
Like if you feel like that's a conversation you want to have and you need to have, sometimes you gotta just be like, yeah, hey, babe, hey, boo, I'm just something. I just ain't, you know what I mean? I ain't feeling like myself. I'm just, and then let them know what's going on. Then you spill your guts. Like sometimes you gotta spill your guts. Just make it known. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, like, because that to me, that's a huge thing. Like if you don't care about my mental health, we can't be booed up. We can't. I'm sorry. Like because that the mental health is going to dictate your physical health in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So if you don't care about my mental health, then
That's a deal breaker.
yeah, gotta be. Gotta
So
be.
so what about the person who is in that relationship, in that space, even at my intentional, even at your intentional having this conversation with me, and I'm not receptive.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little different because we're married.
Mm.
Is that automatically, as far as the marriage, a deal breaker, or what in your opinion could happen to change the culture we got in our marriage?
Counseling. I mean,
Yeah.
and obviously praying. You know what I mean? Praying and stuff like that. But like in a natural sense, counseling. You know, like find somebody who's not going to take a side.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And just go talk. Go talk. Like it can be a space where the guy can vent about what he's dealing with mentally, and then it can be a space where they can talk about he can talk about how her response is just as devastating as whatever he's going through.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
then through somebody who can maybe paint a different picture for her or for his partner. I don't want to necessarily say just her, but for his partner. You know what I'm saying? Because I mean, yeah, you can do it individually, but yeah, it's gonna help me individually to go by myself. But if I'm trying to help us or we need help, you know what I'm saying, in our interactions or how you respond to what I tell you or the stuff that I'm going through, then I think we need to be in the sessions together.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, this is a heavier conversation. I don't think this would be a conversation that ever has an actual end. I
No.
think, I just think, when you're in a relationship with somebody, especially in a marriage, um, your thought process has to be as much for that person as it is for you.
Right.
Like we're one.
Right.
Um, and it's unfortunate that, somebody in a marriage, and not to say that, you're not in a loving, supportive marriage, if you will, but still missing that key piece to where this was the outcome of my life.
Mm-hmm.
I'm dealing in such a way, and I don't feel like there can be a resolve
Right.
anywhere else, so I chose
Right.
to take my life. Like that's a different level of feeling lonely in your
Right.
marriage, of feeling not supported in your marriage, not heard in your marriage.
Right.
Um, but at the same time, that spouse left behind, but I loved him,
Right.
but I loved her, but I
Didn't know how. Sometimes people don't know how.
it's rough.
It is. It is. It's rough. Can be rough on both sides. But that's why I take a lot of conversation. I mean, you know what I mean? Like we always say communication, but I'll just say conversation in general. You know what I mean? Like I'm again making it normal part of your conversation when something like that happens. Or you know what I mean, you hear another story about mental health. It doesn't even necessarily have to be, you could start out slow and talking about somebody else's situation. You know what I'm saying? Just to okay, I'm putting feelers out to see how he or she responds to this conversation. You know what I mean? Because if this happens to this individual who committed suicide, um, and your response to them is, you know what I mean, negative or well, he should have manned up and took care of his business, or you know what I mean, something like that. That gives you a kind of window into how their response is going to be to you.
Yeah.
Like people might be like, no, because you ain't married to them. Yeah, if that's how you respond, then that's how you're gonna respond. You may try to be like, all right, let me make sure I say, but eventually you're gonna say something that you know what I mean lines up with your actual thought process.
Yeah. Yeah. So, we're not gonna be long tonight. We're kind of coming to the end. But I do just want people to know that help is available out there, especially when we're talking about this particular subject. Dealing with suicidal ideations. If you're not finding that help within your circle or at home with your spouse or whatever the case may be, that it is a helpline available to kind of talk through that. It's unfortunate that if I'm married, I would feel like the only place to reach out, and this is just my personal opinion, the only place that I have to reach out is a helpline versus going to have that conversation with my spouse.
Right.
Like that got to be tough for somebody in that situation. And for me, I'll always bring everything back to my relationship with God. That's my center. That I can always count on. That's my center that I can always give advice from that standpoint. But it got to be rough for somebody who don't have what I have. That has to be. I can only imagine how rough that is for somebody. But at the same time, there is hope available. There is phone numbers that you can call,
right.
Hotlines and such. But to his family, we do offer our condolences, because I couldn't imagine.
Right.
Like I literally just, I couldn't imagine, feeling like my husband was my everything and he was great and happy and we dancing and we doing all this stuff. And then he commits suicide because something obviously was lacking, something was obviously missing. And I can't help but feel like somewhere along the way was my fault. That I'm the one missed it. I'm the one wasn't there to offer him whatever he needed, so that wouldn't have been his choice. So I don't know. We're gonna leave y'all with help is available. The number that you can call is 988. And it gets you, to an advocate that's ready to have that conversation. I'm gonna leave you with find a good church home. Find a good church home that is not afraid to have that conversation. That's not afraid to sit with you and have that conversation and pray with you. We all need somebody, and when we're dealing heavy like that, we can't juggle that stuff alone. We literally cannot juggle that stuff alone. We would need, people around us who can, embrace us and draw us in. So, you got any last thoughts?
Yeah, find somebody to talk to. That's one. Even I mean, don't frown upon counseling and stuff like that. Find somebody to talk to. Two is be patient with yourself. Also, be patient with your partner. Just understand that that's not something that's taught at an early age.
Yeah.
Sometimes through life, so understand that they may not know how to have that conversation. But don't sit on it. If you need to, it's okay to have an off day, fellas. It's okay to just feel like something just ain't clicking. Just having a bad day.
Yeah.
It's okay to do that. It's okay to take time to yourself, do self care, whatever that looks like for you. And then the other thing that I'll say is, you don't have to stay stuck, so to speak. If you feel like you know what I mean, like if you just feel like that person just doesn't 100% support you or care about your mental health, I mean that's a huge thing. Like you got to evaluate your relationship and the direction it's going in and stuff like that, because it's not going to be good for anybody. to just stay and kind of, I'm gonna handle this. I'm gonna work through this by myself. That's not gonna work. It's just not. Not saying it'll end like the one guy's life ended, but it's just not going to be a healthy thing for anybody involved in the situation. So
yeah. All right. Well, sometimes we got funny stuff. Sometimes we got serious topics. That we just want to sit and talk about. So we'll be back in 2 weeks. Another topic, another episode, another conversation. Until then, y'all have a good night. We always here to talk. I talk to people good. So we are always here to have conversations. Even if somebody just wants us to pray with you, we always here for that. So until next time, peace out.
Peace.